today we're going to talk about building a thriving, high-performance startup culture. What does that mean? So I am Marina Gorey. I am coming at you live from Walthamstow in the northeast of London. I previously co-founded a kid tech company called Super Awesome, which for about 6 years to about 135 people globally, with offices in New York, Chicago, LA, another 40 people out in venture partnership in APAC. I absolutely love every minute of scaling that company, and I love working with early stage companies, and I'm very obsessed with this concept of high performance and thriving, and I'm going to share my thoughts with you on that today. Most recently, I've been at Seedcamp, where I've been advising across the portfolio with early stage companies on scaling and building their teams and people ops effectively. And I'm also an investor with the fund.vc, where we invest in early stage companies making an impact. Hi, Eric. Thanks, Eric. Okay, cool. And then I'm very excited to share that on Monday I start a new job at Lick. So lickhome.com is a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. It's going to really disrupt the way that we do our interior design. It's really early stage, really interesting opportunity, brilliant team. So I'm super excited to be starting there on Monday. Check it out. And I'm going to kick off with this session. So just want to set the scene for this concept of building a high-performance startup culture. Like, what is culture? So for me, the way I talk about culture, just to completely simplify it, is it's the way that we do things around here. So when we talk about building a culture deck, and then also our values. So our values for me are the behaviors that you can expect from me and the behaviors that I expect from you. So when we sit down and we spend time really committing and thinking about what is this, how are we doing things around here, and what are the values and the behaviors that we value, it's an opportunity to really capture that in the deck, so that then ultimately we can use that information to help us scale and to help individuals and the team thrive, and collectively they can succeed. So culture, just very top line, like, it's how we do things around here. So in this session, I just want to talk you through some kind of thinking points around how does this come into play, and how do we do things, and what matters. And these are just some of the frameworks that I use when I'm thinking about scaling and building out people ops for the organizations that I advise across. So for me, I start to think about like that concept of, it's an architectural concept. It's like you're building foundations, or engineering concept. You're building foundations upon which you're going to genuinely scale. You're going to add more human beings on top of this. You're going to add clients. You're going to add team members. You're going to add investment. Like, so what are we going to have here in the foundations that's going to structurally be reinforced and allow us to scale on top of? And I literally think of that as like concrete and structural reinforcements that goes through that. And what are the structural, like, steel rods that go through our concrete that allow us to really, really scale effectively and build that kind of thriving high performance that we want to see, and that makes things fun. And so starting from day one, like, this is a little bit around my investment thesis as well. The way that I think about investing in the early stage is around, are these pieces of the puzzle there? If you have your own startup, Eric, or if other people in the audience have a startup, thinking and reflecting on, where are we on each of these pieces of this puzzle, and how can we inform what we do by improving on some areas, or even leveraging where we're really strong in some areas. So just mission. Like, I believe you cannot scale or build a high performance anything without a genuine mission, and that means, like, why are we here? Like, why is it worth coming to work every day and doing this? Because if you're building a startup, it's going to be really hard, and it better be worth it. So really figuring out what is it that we do and why is that important, and being able to communicate that to your team is a vital aspect of being able to scale and build high performance. If people know why they're there and why what they're doing is important, then they can figure out like how to get to the end result. If you haven't got a mission and a clear mission, or a clear understanding of what that mission can be, and you can't communicate it, I think you're hitting an immediate stumbling block. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not able to confirm exactly what our mission is today, well, maybe worth thinking about. Leadership. Leadership is obviously, if you're in an early stage, it's across the founding team, but also for me, it applies to right across the team. Like, just that expectation of everybody's self-awareness of their role in upholding the behaviors and the values that, you know, help us individually succeed and thrive and have fun and engage and, you know, have an amazing time as we like tackle this like vital mission, this opportunity to do something significant. Leadership's understanding of, like, as a founding team, the behaviors that you guys are demonstrating and how that then they will scale. Like, there is, you know, it's so simple to say this, and it sounds like, well, it can't literally be like that, but I actually will put myself out there and say that it is monkey see, monkey do. Like, if you have a founding team and they're behaving badly, the team will behave badly. If you have a founding team who uphold the values that, you know, values that scale, then you'll see that too. Okay, that's quite complicated. If anybody's got any questions specifically on that, because I kind of went a bit off piece, let me know. But basically, being aware of, like, as a founding team, the behaviors that you're demonstrating and how they will then scale, whether they're considered bad or good, it doesn't matter. It's your authentic values. Communication. So there we go. Being able to communicate what's important so that then ultimately you can help people and empower them with information, and really consciously doing that and really thinking about that across your organization as you're scaling, as you're growing from day 1 to day 20 to 500, to a team of 500. Like, how do we communicate, and what are we communicating, and are we doing it well? And then fundamentally weaving through everything that you do this concept of evolution. So are you prepared to evolve as an individual, as a founder, as a product, as a team, as a market? Are you ready for that evolution? Are you building that as a talking point, as a thinking point into the way you do things? I think it comes across in a lot of the culture and values that you see of early stage companies around making mistakes. Like, ultimately, what that's saying is we want to make mistakes because we want to learn, we want to grow, we want to change the way we do things so that we can do it better, we can be more effective, more efficient, and setting the expectation of how evolution works in a startup is a really great way to set the expectation of what the experience is going to be like for your team, going from a really early stage where it's like everyone's expected to work across lots of different things, to then later you're expected to maybe work across a completely different thing that you've no idea of, but that's okay that you're going to get it wrong because we believe in you. Or then later again, you now have a team that you're not literally going to make as much impact and direct impact as you had before. The direct line to you and the impact isn't as clear, and you have to also be comfortable with that. So that evolution, and that's a vital part of the scalability, is important. So for me, 4 kind of tenets, 4 kind of building blocks to really consider around scalability, and, you know, what are we doing today that could be better to then allow us to scale more effectively. Individuals thrive and collectively succeed. Like, for me, that's the end goal. Like, how do we help every individual that comes into our organization to thrive as an individual, and then collectively, then that's a success. You know, how do we then the relationships that come from that collectively we can do something really significant and achieve that mission. I look at this at the moment very specifically across 2 specific areas: empowering with information and ensuring your team feel valued. And the reason that these are very specific right now, and they can evolve and they can change, but right now I feel like if you're going to be thinking about empowering your team to thrive and collectively succeed, like in the current remote environment and the current kind of flux of the world, I feel like these 2 tenets can really help you think through what can we do better and how can we empower our team to then thrive and succeed. So empower with information. So there's kind of 3 key areas. So one is clear performance expectations. So that goes from everything from setting priorities and setting expectations around what's important to the business, like using methodologies that work for you, updating them or creating bespoke versions that work for you. Like OKRs, I feel like are a brilliant tool. If you're not using them, definitely worth looking at to make sure your team understand what the priorities are for your team and the business for each quarter or whatever cadence is effective in your organization. But also, like, what's the performance expectation today, given that until next week the kids aren't back in school. So if you've got parents in your team, being open about the expectation, because if you're not starting to have those conversations and you're not being comfortable enough to figure that out, you're going to create situations where people start to feel undervalued, and ultimately maybe can even lead to burnout, because you hear a lot of people without kids, with kids, whatever, that they're working longer hours now that they're at home. That doesn't necessarily mean high performance. It's not about the amount of hours you do. It's about setting priorities and giving people the endpoints and the reason why it's important so that they can get there in the right way. Communication change. So anything that's changing in your business today, don't make any assumptions about what your team knows. Really think actively about, like, I would literally think, what does my team know that's helping them do their job really well today? And then ask myself, oh, do they really know that for sure? And if they don't know that for sure, I would start to think about, how do I make sure we build that into our communication, and the next stand-up we have, the next team meeting, next useful email that's going out, like, how do we make sure that it's known? And then internal communication, like always looking at what is the cadence and quality of the internal communication, especially now that you're remote. How often are people meeting? What does that look like? Like actually, like taking a conscious effort to look at that and really figure out what better looks like, and giving your team the tools and the the permission, to do it. And when I say permission, I don't mean you literally give permission. I mean just asking yourself, do our team feel like they have permission to just make this better? And if they don't, like figuring out how do they make sure that they have that autonomy to drive improvements and really help work for everybody. And then ensuring your team feel valued. Like when we're in the office, it's very easy to have a bad conversation with somebody and walk away, and then someone else says something good to you or smiles at you, or the founder comes out of another room and high fives you, and they're in a mood, and it all just gets better very quickly. But if you're at home on your own, I mean, it's hard to get that kind of social interaction that really puts everything into perspective. So you can't avoid the hard conversations, but at the same time, how do you then fundamentally create that foundation of this person is genuinely feels valued, and even if something bad goes wrong or they haven't got that immediate support from their team, what have they got, and are we doing a good job? So number one there is managers. Your managers could not be more important right now, and management is cascades. So as a leader, as a founder, really thinking about your management style and how that's impacting everybody else, the information that's cascading, cutting through that, breaking that up, making sure humans, everyone in your team feels valued and feels informed, feels empowered, feels listened to. And then relationships. So relationships, we when we were in the office and we had meetings that went off piste for 20 minutes, and then there was 6 people in the meeting and 2 people left thinking that was a waste of time, and then the other 4 left with a smile. That wasn't a waste of time if you're early stage. If you have the luxury of that extra 20 minutes, now what you're doing is building relationships. Later, when you hear people, they introduce these concepts of offsites and team socials. They're introduced because you lose the luxury of the day-to-day interactions that were happening, and they're really valuable. So spending time with your team in a social way, in a fun way, in an authentic way, it's super important to creating those values and those relationships together, encouraging your team to have off-piste conversations, encouraging your team to make time for chats, using tools like the Slack plugin Donut, but setting expectations of how to use it and how to get the most out of it, and sharing as a leader what your experience has been like and what you're doing to build your relationships. Just to have, admitting that it's awkward. And that I did a 5-minute call with Mary, and we didn't really have anything to talk about, but I called her the next day and we had a great chat, because it gets better and you get less awkward because you're just used to the fact that it's okay to just have a chat. But might not be obvious to everybody. I've got a few more slides, but I think we're going to run out of time. So I just wonder, has anybody got any questions, or anybody want to kind of dig into any of that in any more detail? Values that scale. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. So values that scale. What I was trying to say was that the values for me are the behaviors that you can expect from me, and the behaviors that I can expect from you. So whether that's being kind, or self-improvement, or helping other people. Basically, the way I behave is going to be upholding my values. So if you have values considering like how do you behave and are they scalable and where can they be problematic. So if one of your values is be aggressive, like I'm a naturally aggressive person, if your value is be aggressive, you have to consider when is that valuable and when is it going to be a problem as you scale. So consciously kind of breaking that down and being aware, and then that's the work you do when you're building your kind of values and culture deck. Like the work that you do in building that content is really when you're figuring out like what scales and what doesn't scale, and how do you optimize and how do you build awareness around it. Does that make sense? Where can you find it? Yeah, there's a podcast on Seedcamp's podcast on and there's a podcast on Spotify. I think if you Google my name, you'll find Marina Gorey on Spotify like building and scaling teams. And then I've got a blog on Medium as well, and on some things more recently. And I'm just I can share some stuff I've built on Notion as well. And if anybody's any specific questions, like you can reach out directly. Let me just see what I had finally. Oh, let me just finish off with one really final point, which is performance tracking, because people right now are asking like, how do we track performance? And for me, I just really feel so strongly about that if you built a team that was already productive and that was doing a great job, and if you can go back and if you can like empower them with information, empower them to feel valued, and then you can set priorities and communicate well, then ultimately you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together for high performance. And where it can go wrong is if people aren't engaged. So and it's not working, so it's not effective. So I would really start to think about like, are my team engaged? Do they understand their role, the mission, what we're trying to achieve here, what the priorities are? Do they genuinely understand that? Do they believe in their impact and what they're contributing to that mission? And do they understand the value that they're bringing as an individual? And then ultimately, like, does everybody in your team genuinely want this company to succeed? Is that genuinely working and happening and there? And for me, tracking that like starts to be where you're going to pinpoint where you've got problems and where you need to like really address, are you being effective in the way that you're empowering, the way that you're making people feel valued? And I was going to talk about mistakes I've made, but I'm obsessed with this, so I won't go into it in too much detail. But basically, a huge proportion of mistakes that I have made at different points can be tracked back to a job spec. And I'm a bit obsessed with job specs, and that work that goes into creating that, I believe, is a kind of almost like a psychological workbook in itself, to just create that job spec and connect with what this role is going to be and the ownership and the responsibility and expectations around this new hire. Anyways, we're completely out of time. I think I can take some questions. I don't know if we get kicked out, but if anyone has any more questions, please drop them in. Otherwise, thank you for joining. I hope you're enjoying Upstart. Such a super quick format, really fun. Thanks everybody, and take care. Oh, Sujit, okay, I'll answer, because I don't know if we get kicked out, but we're here, so let me try and answer that. How do you ensure transparency in a startup team? That is a really big question, and I'll tackle it in a small way, but it's a much bigger question than this. So like, this is not please don't consider this to be what my opinion on literally and the best way to tackle it, because it is a big question. So transparency, the role of leadership is complicated when you're building a scale up or a startup. Like, what is transparency and what is information that empowers, and where is the roller coaster? Like, when you're building and scaling a company, it's literally a roller coaster. And like, the advice I give to founders that I work with is like, see the roller coaster, don't get on the roller coaster. Like, that's to the founders. Like, you got to keep your team off that roller coaster. So figuring out what's the most effective and vital information to share, and making sure that you're absolutely trustworthy in everything that you do, obviously is key. But you don't literally, I don't think, have to share absolutely everything with everybody. It's not effective. It's not in everyone's interest. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is if you commit as a company to be transparent in everything that you do, now you've committed to that, and that's a genuine commitment that you have to follow through on. Otherwise, you're completely hitting brick walls. So just committing to that in itself, for me, is like a really big challenge, because, like I said, you've got to keep people off the roller coaster. And then you'll hear some companies and they go, yeah, we are 100% transparent. And first question I say is, oh, great, where can your team find your salaries? And they're like, oh yeah, we've chosen not to share salaries because X, Y. Like, there's always going to be complexity to information. How do you ensure transparency? I think fundamentally ensure trustworthiness, ensure radical honesty, and build trust with each other, and through feedback and being as honest as humanly possible and being a great person. And I don't know if that like answers your question. Like I said, I think it's quite a complex question to answer, and I've tried to look at it in a couple of different meaty ways, but it's quite complex. Ensure transparency, I think ensure honesty, ensure trustworthiness, and be conscious about what you communicate. A book that I would highly, highly recommend, and it's one of my absolute top tier books I always recommend, is Conscious Business by Frank Kaufman. It's a brilliant book about, and it really kind of breaks into that kind of honesty piece around, conversations and being open even when it's hard. And even when it's hard, you can learn, because like, why was that hard? So it's quite an interesting piece. Okay. The book was Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman. Let me see if I can just quickly grab it. Yeah, I'll just share it quickly in the link. Hang on. In the chat. Okay, it's a big Amazon link. Here you go. Yeah, it's a brilliant book. It's one of the books that I think I've read that you genuinely go, oh, I didn't know that, or I hadn't thought about it in that way. It's really fresh thinking for me personally. Really valuable. Okay. No problem, Sajid. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of conference.